Let's go ahead and get started. So I'll put the title slide up in a minute, but I just want to welcome everybody to the BCE, and we'll have a chance to dive in a little bit here in just a minute. But I want to see if anybody's bringing anything with them today. Anything that feels important for you in terms of checking in for today, or what you're bringing to our conversation about trusting life. Hmm. Right. Okay, I'll bring this up. Yeah. All right. All right. Let me get the. Okay. So we've been studying trust for some time, and at this point, we've been looking at trusting life itself. Sometimes it's difficult these days. But we're going to use this sort of graphic and this notion of flow and sort of have a little look at that today. Um, and we're going to, I have a feeling it's what happened to this? It's disappeared. Oh, well, so we're going to look at trusting the current. So it's the energy of the water moving downstream. And we're going to ask ourselves sort of two questions for today's journey. One is, what is the current showing you? And what is the current offering you? And the premise, for those of you who are new, we've got one sort of breathing practice that we do every time we meet, and we have a different perspective on it each time. And these are all just an opportunity for you to allow yourself to do some self-care and have a little meditation with us for some time in the beginning. And then we have plenty of time for you to debrief uh, afterwards. And one of the sort of sources for today is, as we move through this sort of cycle for this 4-month period, is this idea of the current. And it's something that those of you who've studied the ID work with me have heard some about, but I'm becoming increasingly interested in this. And it comes most recently into my consciousness through um, a gentleman named Christopher Alexander, was a very famous architect, designer, and he talked about unfolding. And the key to design is to put things into the environment, but the environment and the context actually shapes what you choose and shapes what fits. So often in the West, we sort of see ourselves as separate and individual. I have to go do these things, and I have to go make it happen, and I have to set goals. And so a lot of what we're focusing on around trust, oops, sorry, is the ability to allow ourselves to be more aware of our own environment. In this case, the current of a river. So if you've ever rafted or kayaked or canoed on a river, you end up spending a lot of time paying very close attention to current. And one of the things that's sometimes the current is obvious, like the water's rippling or waving, but oftentimes the current is not visible at first, and it's only by feeling into it with your paddle, for example, that you may get a sense of what the current is actually doing, or watching your boat or watching leaves on the river. So part of the whole piece about letting be, which is our part we're going to focus on today, is like using our environment and what the environment is saying to us to help us get a sense of what's being asked of us. And it would be something like if maybe you have a difficult encounter and it's easy to fall into blame of yourself or of them or of circumstances, and which is a very natural human reaction. But the letting be is, well, what if I just let it be what it was? And what if I just looked at what it's trying to help me notice about myself? Um, so you might find maybe a driver cut you off on traffic, and it might be easy to say bad words and to gesture at them or to do whatever. But then you kind of catch your breath and you come back to, I seem pretty sensitive to a really small infraction. I might want to take a look at my own lack of self-care or my own struggle around my own energy. And so a lot of this is helping us pay finer attention to our own environment and what it's inviting us to see. Um, so we have two slides. This one's on every time, just as a reminder, particularly for those of you who are new to us. And then we'll have a story that will ground this practice again today, which I'll read to you, just so we have that as shared context. And so you may learn a lot on this particular session, but we're not going to teach you anything. Um, and we're going to sort of abide by the principles of this work to let you lean into the center of your experience and see what you notice, what you experienced today, and what that means to you. And so to get us sort of kicked off, I'm going to just invite you to close your eyes, otherwise you'll stare at the screen and try to read all these words. But just invite you, this is a sort of setting for our practice for today. I want to just read to you this story from Richard Bach. And this will be sort of a warm-up of our meditation. So if you wouldn't mind just closing your eyes for a minute, because this will provide a great sort of anchoring for our practice. And so as you relax, you might just sort of notice, is there anything you need to let go of or put aside so your mind can focus on your experience with us today? It'll all be there when we're done. And Richard writes, once there was a village of creatures that lived along the bottom of a great crystal river. The current of the river swept silently over them all, young and old, rich and poor, good and evil. The current going its own way, knowing only its own crystal self. Each creature in its own manner clung tightly to the twigs and rocks of the river bottom, for clinging was their way of life, and resisting the current was what each had learned from birth. Resisting the current was what each had learned from birth. But one creature said at last, I am tired of clinging. Though I cannot see it with my eyes, I trust that the current knows where it is going. I shall let it go, and let it take me where it will. Clinging, I shall die of boredom. The other creatures laughed and said, Fool, let go, and that current you worship will throw you tumbled and smashed across the rocks, and you will die quicker than boredom. But the one heeded them not, and taking a breath did let go, and was once tumbled and smashed by the current across the rocks. Yet, in time, as the creature refused to cling again, the current lifted him free from the bottom, and he was bruised and hurt no more. And the creatures downstream, to whom he was a stranger, cried, See, a miracle, a creature like ourself, yet it flies. See the Messiah come to save us all. And the one carried in the current said, I am no more Messiah than you. The river delights to lift us free, if we only dare to let go. So I'm just going to invite you to come back into the room and just sort of sit with the story and anything that you might have encountered on your travel. And I want to just offer this graphic for our process. For those of you who are new in particular, we're going to focus on the second step today, but it's a broader process to use our breath as a way to have us access and experience parts of ourself on this journey to kind of help ourself grow. So again, we're going to focus on this sort of second phase for today. And this one is focusing on what is and let go. and to trust the river. Um, and so I'm just going to invite you for a minute, about actually a few minutes. I want to just walk you through a guided practice focusing on this phase of the full circle. And I'm going to invite you to bring into the breathing practice anything that is on your mind or your heart today about your life, about someone in your life, about your practice, just something that's sort of occupying you at the moment that um, might help us to be able to use this process to help yourself. So I'm just going to invite you to close your eyes again. And I'm going to invite you just to be with whatever emerges from you and to notice if there's any place along the way that you find yourself like the other creatures clinging to the rock, saying, I don't want to go here. And just notice that. And then see what it would take for you to begin to let go. All right. So if you would just close your eyes, that would be great. So I'd like you just to bring into your mind's eye whatever comes up for you that speaks to you about the topic you'd like to reflect on for today. And as this comes into your mind's eye, I'd like you just to see what it would mean just to accept it just as it is. The way we think about this is to breathe with it. We're not breathing against it. We're not surrendering to our breath in a way that we lose ourselves. We're just breathing with whatever we were holding in our mind's eye. And one of the ways we can help ourselves to just breathe with it, rather than trying to judge it or change it or fix it, is you might just like put your hand on your diaphragm, that piece just below the center of your chest. Many of us have a very tight diaphragm. And so part of the breathing with this we should feel our hand kind of move kind of down and out, if you will, at our diaphragm. Sometimes we hold it in and try to just bravely be with something, deal with something. Sometimes we lose ourselves and collapse. But what if we just allowed our diaphragm to be relaxed and strong as we breathe with whatever's on our mind right now? And the more that we can do this, the more we can actually release ourselves to let it be. Otherwise, we end up like the person in their canoe who's trying to fight the current or feel like want to change the current or overcome the current. And so could we just let it be? So rather than thinking about breathing with our lungs, in reality, we're breathing with our diaphragm. So see to what degree you can allow yourself to notice your diaphragm do its thing. And it will do its thing more fully and effectively if we can just let it be. And as we allow ourselves to let it be, you might notice that the story you were telling yourself when you began is already starting to change. Maybe you notice a new sensation or a new emotion, or maybe there's a perspective you did not see before. Maybe you can mentalize or empathize with somebody else in your story that before this you were judging. And so the gift of this phase is that we can actually curate and try to understand what is this encounter, this experience, this environment, what's it trying to help us to see? And the skill that we need for this is our willingness to trust and access the mystery. When we feel like we have to know, then we tend to grip and not let things be because we like them to be something else. Our breath often shortens because our diaphragm freezes. So as you surrender into the mystery of the current and sensing where it wants to take you and helping you see in a new way, whatever it is you brought into your mind's eye when we started. And as you do that, what is it asking you to pay attention to and curate as the essence of what's being asked of you? If you stopped fighting it and breathed with it, where would the current take you? And if you imagine yourself like one of the creatures in our story at the bottom of a river and you sense the current, just again notice, is there a part of you that wants to hold on? And if so, how might you bring some breath and love to that part of yourself to allow you to let go and see where the current takes you? And the question then becomes, what if you could let go and let be? As we prepare to come back to the room, I just would like you to revisit whatever you came into your mind when you began and see if you notice if anything has shifted for you. And what is that like for you? Right. When you're ready, I'd like you to come back into the room. And if there's anything that feels really important, you can drop it in the chat box while we're getting ready to move you into some small groups. Be happy to read out anything or have Karen bring that to the surface if that feels important to you. But otherwise, just take a minute, kind of check in with yourself, and in a minute, I'll give you the instructions. Mm. So what I'd like to do, and Karen will put these three questions in the chat box so you have them as well. Um, but what did you notice that was important for you about this experience? What has shifted in your relationship with the current that's connected to whatever was on your mind? Is there a sense of energy or flow or that's asking for something from you? And in that, did something surprise you? Did you allow yourself to drop into more of the mystery of this whole thing rather than staying up in your head trying to figure it all out? And as the reminder, as you head into your small group, this was a quote actually from Christopher Alexander, but the environment holds the knowledge you need. And so the contours of the environment, the experiences in the environment provide the knowledge and wisdom that relate to whatever it is you brought to the river. So again, you might imagine as you move into your small groups, floating on water or anything that would give you a felt reminder of the current. So I just want to check and see if there's any comments, Karen, or if there's any questions that any of you have before we go into the small groups.
Well, Indigo said, I got out of the river of my thoughts and crawled up onto the bank. Peaceful.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Indigo.
All right. So Karen, if we could give them 50 minutes, 50,
Okay.
and the usual groups of 3 or so.
Okay. And does anybody need to leave before we go into this? This would be the time to raise
Colleen's
your
got her hand up.
Yeah, I have to go, but thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you so much.
I'll have to leave at 1, but I'm here till then.
Okay.
So you have a little more than an hour. That sounds great. Okay.
I could be in the group with the person at 1
Okay.
because
Thanks,
I have
Mary.
a little bit short time too.
I
Okay.
didn't catch that. That was Mari. Okay.
That was Mary.
Mari and Indigo. But
Mari,
Yes.
I probably won't
Yeah.
do that because that'll leave whoever's left by themselves. So I'll make sure you're not
okay,
together.
yep.
I
Okay.
need to leave as well, but thank you.
All right.
That's Janine.
That's Janine, yes.
Okay, well, maybe I'll put you 3 together then.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Hold on one second. Just give me a moment to do that. Okay?
Sure.
And let's see.
Mm. 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 Yeah, so Karen,
I'm actually trying to find Janine here. Just 1 second. Well, folks,
she may have already left.
maybe
Yeah.
that's the issue here. Okay. All right. We are really close. I have a couple of 2s, but you should be fine.
Mm.
Okay. Folks, we'll see you back. You do have the questions in your chat if you want to make sure you have those, and we'll see you soon.
A wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. All right. I just wanted to, I need to correct an error that Karen and I, in all of our brilliance, we missed a typo on the slides. So I'm going to put the correct one up, particularly for those of you who are watching this at home, that you'll be able to, if I can get it to work, that'd be helpful. So that if you're watching the recording, I'm going to stop sharing again and do it again. If you're at home and you're reviewing the video, that you'll be able to actually see it. And why is it not letting me share the screen? Apparently it doesn't want to. My environment's telling me, don't share the slide.
Go with the current there,
I
David.
click on the slide and it doesn't show up. So we'll try that again later. So
Breathe with.
what's that?
Breathe with.
Apparently, I think that's a good idea, Marion.
Gosh, so brilliant.
Anyways, we'll forego all of that and we'll try to get at the very end. But for now, I just want to hear what emerged for you from your groups.
And you are sharing your screen, David.
Oh, yes, that part worked, but it just didn't go anywhere. It was like the worst of both worlds. Yeah.
strong current.
Apparently. See that
Hmm.
the part of me that has a high need for completion is being thwarted. So I note to self, go back to breathing.
Hmm.
Yeah. But how were your groups for you?
I'm really excited about our group.
Hmm.
I was with Laurel and Brenda,
Mm-hmm.
and we went around on the exercise and the results and made pretty pretty quick work of that, and then said, "Oh, okay, now what?" And what came up for us was um, gracefully exiting this program. Basically, I think I could say, and how are we going to report? What are we going to report? What might be a part of that? What doesn't need to be a part of that? Those kinds of things came up, and it was really lovely, and of course individualized, because we'll be doing that in our own individual ways. So
Mhm.
yeah, it was just a wonderful time.
Hmm.
I just want to add, since there are people here, the three of us have all been in the narrative coaching course, and we're coming to the end and asked to write a little bit
Oh, I'm sorry, my apologies.
about our experience. And I was very unsure about what to write, and through the process and questions from the group, I've gotten much more clarity. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, I wanted to just share. I was with and MJ, and we had sounds like it was similar to that conversation where we went through the exercise and then went on. And one of the distinctions or questions we discussed was the difference between drift and curate in the current. And so if we let go and we're in the current, is it possible? It could be possible that we're just drifting. And what is that moment when we make a choice, or maybe call in a different part of ourselves or something to, I don't know, I guess we like word curate, or have some agency about where we're going. And so that was something we talked about quite a bit. And also, how do you sense the current? How do you know it's the current? And that was a very rich question for us to explore.
Yeah. Does anybody want to venture an answer for Perry's questions? Anything that might have emerged from your group to address those? Mm.
Hi, David.
Hello.
Long time no see.
Yes.
I obviously had the pleasure of doing the narrative coach certification, and I love coming to these sessions because you always get something new, or there's always a gem somewhere. And in our group with Miriam and Hiva, we all had these different things that we were thinking about and feeling and going through that current. I think that the overall theme was, how do you slow down in the current? Because when the current takes you, sometimes it really takes you to a place where maybe that's not where you want to go. So how do we slow down within that pace? And I think that's where I would say the three of us were getting to the same point of, if we just slow down a bit, we can then flow easier in that current.
Yeah. And there's many layers to that question, but I think for me, the focus of today is asking ourselves to look at the life we've created, which has sped up sort of overnight when we weren't looking. And then we wonder why we're not having a hard time slowing down because we created a life in which that's impossible. And I think about when I used to take canoeing trips with kids. It was often hard for them to discern where should I be looking in the river to know where to go. And so I said part of it is getting to know the river. And like many of them had just learned how to drive. So they're kind of imagining that a canoe is kind of like a car. So they'd see a turn in the river and they'd just paddle, paddle, paddle till they got to the turn. And they were expecting to turn the boat, not realizing they're already 50 yards past when they sort of started turning. Yeah, and so part of it is, I guess, where I wanted to focus today was this notion of not obsessing about where's the current or how do I find it, but just noticing your surroundings, in this case, in the river. What are we noticing about the river that might give us some clues about the current? And how do we want to be in that current in a way that helps us both stay safe, but make our way down the river. Yeah, and so for me, I just again we often focus so much on ourselves, like how do I slow down, as opposed to how do I shift things in my life so the current calms and I don't need to slow down because I already am. And yeah. I mean, and the irony is that when I did a class some years ago, basically about this whole thing about finding more equilibrium and, sort of calm in your life. And half the people just burst out laughing when they came to the class. They realized, well, I was really struggling. How am I going to fit in this class? I'm slowing down. I don't know if I can squeeze it or not, but I'm going to try because I really want to come. And then we just, yeah, they got the point straight away about the purpose of the program. But yeah, yeah. Yeah. Anybody else want to check in or share?
Yeah, in our
Emmy.
group, I was in the group with Brad and Kent, and each of us kind of was describing where we were in that space, and just reflecting on what you just said, Rosalinda, that we were very aware of our landscape, which of course included the river, and also how we are in our vessels. So we had somebody paddling and we had somebody in an inner tube. And I think when I started, I was in the water and I thought, oh, I don't have to be in the water and dragging, whatever. And we just kind of got there later, but we were bringing the experience that you took us through into this session that the three of us had, and then kind of looking at how does it apply to what we're dealing with in that larger environment. And I'll just speak for myself, but I always get so much out of these breakouts because just hearing somebody else's story and perspective is refreshing. Different questions being asked that suddenly become really relevant to whatever my particular circumstances are. And also noticing how each of us could look at each other and what we were bringing and reflect that in a way that made it bigger than the individual stories.
Thanks, Lenny. All right. All right, I'm going to be brave. I'm going to try this again. Your screen. Okay. These slides do not want to be seen. So my my apologies to those who are listening in. Just look at the whole full circle. You'll see the correct language for the one we just did. I'm going to abandon this effort. And just share that, I don't know why. So we're doing a program in October, November called Lighten Your Load, which is building on the BCEs. We're looking at the Five Maturities. It's a sort of a sample of what we're starting next year, which is a series of virtual retreats based on the Five Maturities to kind of go deeper in a similar way that we do on our BCEs, but those things are becoming available, and we've got some new things we're launching in January in anticipation of some big changes for us in terms of a partnership. So that's exciting, and I look forward to those of you in our programs right now to celebrating our graduation here coming up in a few weeks. And I just want to see if there's any other questions or final thoughts that you'd like to share before we close for today.
Thank you, David, for always bringing this forth. And it's always something new.
Yeah, always something new. Yep. Yeah.
And folks, I put some links in the chat for your ease to find things. They're self-explanatory.
Rosalind, you would find a kick in this, but I'm going to a reunion next week, and one of the people I'll see is someone I've known since I was 8. And she, when I was describing what I do for a living, she goes, "Yeah, but you've always done that." When you were a kid. And then this, and it started with my curiosity about my family of origin and how I could help them be happier. But yeah, it just this lifelong quest of the mystery of being human and trying to find language that matches both the evidence for best practice, but also speaks to the spirit of what we're trying to do. So, yeah.
What's new to us?
What's that?
It's new to us.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
How was that for you, David, to have someone know you that well back when you were a
It's
little?
pretty amazing. It's now 60 years that we've known each other. Yeah. It's quite wild.
That's a gift.
It is a gift. Yeah. Yeah,
It's a giant gift.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Karen, always for your fabulous hosting. And we look forward to seeing you down the road next time around.
Goodbye.
All right. Be well.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.